whenever we have any debate, whether it's about a new item, whether it's about a new policy, whether it's about a new organizational setup, you have to ask the question, does it really truly create customer value in the long term?
A company serving millions of customers, a fiercely competitive retail sector. The tech giants are redrawing market boundaries, and you've got the fast-changing Chinese business environment. I mean, it's hard to imagine a tougher set of circumstances for a CEO. And of course, today's business landscape is noisy and turbulent for all of us. So what is the CEO's job? Well, it's to cut through that noise and focus on what matters. Your products, the frontline folks who deliver them, and of course, ultimately, your customers. So how do you stay focused? How do you build the routines and strategies that keep everyone aligned on winning instead of distracted by the chaos? Well, perhaps the answer lies in poetry, hammer drills, and of course, a monkey with a gun. I'm Jimmy Allen, and this is Founders Mentality, the CEO Sessions. And today we're talking to Christina Zhu, and she's president and CEO of Walmart China. And that includes their multi-format portfolio of hypermarkets and Sam's Clubs. Walmart China is one of the leading omni-channel retailers with about 400 stores and clubs across 100 plus cities in China. During her career, Christina has held leadership positions in diverse sectors and is recognized as one of the most powerful business leaders in Asia. But her journey with Walmart began in the most unusual of ways. She came in as CEO in 2020 in the middle of COVID, a challenge by any standard, but one that Christina transformed into an opportunity.
I think actually it was probably some of the best moments for all of us in our career. I actually didn't feel I needed to motivate the team. The team motivated me. COVID is a time when the purpose, our mission, really come to life. The lockdown happened late for China, but it happened really severely for China. And we really served the purpose of time. We provided food that continued supply to customers and families in real dire needs. And our associates really rose up to the occasion. They really were the heroes. That really helped to build the team as well. And as I said, I didn't feel like I needed to motivate our associates. They really motivated me.
You know, you are famous in the CEO forums because you said during the pandemic that one of the things that we all had forgotten about and need to appreciate is what's going on with frontline people. And that somehow as leaders, you used a phrase that we need to create joyful routines. And I'd love you just to describe what you meant by that when you first introduced it, because it was so visceral for you coming out of COVID.
Sure, Jimmy. When I think about joyful routines, I think about three things. First is purpose. Connecting our frontline, making sure our frontline can connect what they do to a larger purpose. It's not just about the task at hand. It's about what they do making a difference in customers' life. And when they understand that connection, it transforms the job into something much bigger and much more meaningful. I think second thing is routine, making the magic happen every day, right? I mean, retail is routine. It's beautifully simple. In many ways, it really is simple, but it's also incredibly hard. The real challenge comes in delivering on your promise every day, every time, with every single customer. I think third thing really is simplicity, making it easier for our people to serve the customers, taking out any complexity that does not create customer value, eliminate it, and always seek that input from your frontline associates because they see all the frictions firsthand. They know better than anyone else what's truly valuable and what's just simply a waste of time. And no one feels good about doing something that's pointless.
I love the way you describe it. I mean, it's connected to the why, the purpose, why do we exist? But there's also a huge element of empowerment, which is if the routines are designed for the front line, then they have the right to say, hey, this complexity is getting in my way. How do I make my job simple? The hard thing about that, Christina, that as you describe it is keeping customer promises every interaction every day can be exhausting. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious about where the energy comes from to live that purpose every day, to keep a customer promise every interaction every day.
I think rituals matter, Jimmy. They do. Rituals are powerful. You know our Walmart here, right? We start every meeting, every event, every store visit with it. We talk about who's number one? It's the customer. Whose Walmart is it? My Walmart. It's a way to reinforce our commitment to our customer and to our purpose. Second is also bring the customer's voice into everything we do. Another ritual that I love at Walmart is at every new store opening, it's not the CEO who gives the speeches, it's a customer. I was at a new store opening and the value customer, she shared something that was so powerful and moved all of us who were present. And she said, Walmart has been a constant in my family. My mother and I, we used to go, and at that time we had to take 40 minutes bus ride to our nearest Walmart. And my mom knew that's where she got the best for her family. And now I have my own kids now. I'm a mom myself. Walmart is also my choice. That is such a powerful reminder that trust is earned, not a given. That is more powerful than any corporate memo can do. Third thing is focus. In retail, when you face a business challenge, it's so tempting just to add more SKUs, more channels, more promotions, more everything. But leaders must help to create focus. Fewer, bigger, better. The most successful teams I've seen, they have laser focus. Everyone is pointed in the same direction, and they don't have time for anything else.
So I really want to underline something Christina said. It's so important. Create routines and rituals that eliminate complexity. If your processes work, you're creating great frontline jobs, and your frontline passes the joy they feel onto your customers. Let's just take a look at Pret a Manger. The whole business is built around one promise: fast food with a smile. That's it. That's the strategy. But to deliver that, the founder, Julian Metcalf, had to make one pretty bold strategic choice: simplicity. For example, Julian refused to let Pret take made-to-order sandwich requests. Not because it wasn't possible, but because it added complexity. When questioned about that choice, Metcalf said, look, if you have our sort of volumes, then you'd have a line a mile long. And I can't bear queues. They mean unhappy customers and stressed staff. Look, frontline obsession means that every strategy choice is translated in what it means for the front line. We don't just say our customers want more choice. We also consider our people stop smiling with complex food orders. So employee satisfaction isn't an attitude issue. It's a leadership design issue. The CEO needs to design joyful routines that help their teams win. And how do you create those? Well, you need to stay close enough to the jobs that matter to your customers. Less time managing the managers and more time in the front line. I can't tell you the number of times I'm sitting in an executive committee meeting and all the managers are talking about strategy, and never one time do they translate their choices into what it means in terms of frontline routines and behaviors. The importance of rituals and shared experiences, I think, is one of the most underestimated things in business. Some of these things that look like a little bit of a waste of time, look a little bit like, is it performative, actually can matter hugely if the leadership believes in them.
You know how we always say that people are a whole person when they're at work? We're not just about our titles, we're also a whole person. I think the same thing goes for organization. The organization is actually organic. Yes, we have a business model. Yes, we have a business strategy. Yes, we have numbers. But you also need that something extra, that soul, that purpose, the values, all these. I don't call it performative. I call them intangibles. The intangibles are what makes us live and can actually grow a really, truly scalable business.
It's interesting because I know you were quite critical at one point in our CEO forum as we began talking about joyful routines. You started to see examples where the CEOs were using it in the wrong way. And I'd love you just to kind of clarify what you've seen go wrong when people talk about joyful routines versus what you think is the right way to talk about it.
Joyful routine is not just about creating superficial sense of happiness. It's really about that well-designed, human-centric, tech-enabled processes that actually are the foundation for scaling excellence. And so don't focus on the superficial sense of happiness, and certainly don't prioritize joy at the expense of routine, right? The real goal is actually to create an environment where associates can experience the joy of winning and the joy of winning together. But crucially, winning is only possible when you actually have the right strategy. And joyful routines that support the wrong strategy are not right and will not be joyful at all, right? We shouldn't be even being talking about routines unless we're sure that we'll have the right strategy. Otherwise, we're just efficiently heading to the wrong direction.
The struggle I imagine you have is you are living in, I think, the most dynamic and turbulent marketplace on earth. If someone were to describe a place where you couldn't possibly develop routines, it would be China retail, an omni-channel environment, massive tech players, et cetera. So how do you develop a strategy that then can translate into routines in such a turbulent environment?
I think your question really is about how do we make it real? How do we make sure that our strategy actually works? That stuff that we crafted in the meeting room that actually gets implemented in the right way in the floor and actually gets to really serve the customers we're meant to serve. I always say we're lucky we're in the retail business. In many other industries, I think it's actually very hard for leaders to really understanding what's going on in the ground. But for us, it's very straightforward. Just go to the shop, go to the store, go to the club. You see it right there. In today's omnichannel world, that also means visiting your online store as well. You see everything. These are what I call our moments of truth. This is where we see how our strategies play out and the real-world impact of our decisions. When I visit our stores, I deliberately, intentionally would actually try to see everything through 3 distinct lenses. The first lens is always the customer's perspective. Second, our frontline associates' perspective. And third and last is our retailers' professional perspective. And I think customer lens means a lot more than just thinking about the customers. I think it's so easy for us to get caught up in our own P&L, our assortment strategy, our performance, KPIs, and our processes. But sometimes we might be thinking that we're doing our best as retailers, but that retailer's best can be actually very far from what customers really need and want. Someone actually once said, an amateur's perspective is the best weapon for innovation. And we need to step back and look at things with a fresh set of eyes and see things as ordinary customers do. Are we really creating experience that delight the customer or simply confuse the customers? Are we making their lives easier and better? And I think that's, for me, it's really how I do it, is making sure what we do is real.
You ask almost any business leader, and they'll parrot back to you, look, the customer comes first. But, and this might shock you, they're wrong. What comes first is the product and the front line that makes and sells the product. Unless the people who actually serve the customer have all the tools and processes they need, there's no point in talking about being customer-centric. But if you start with the front line, I guarantee you customers will follow. And to really understand frontline obsession in action, we need to now head out to rural India. We're going to find that monkey with the gun. We're going to Jaipur rugs. Jaipur Rugs design director Kavita Chaudhary grew up sketching alongside village weavers. And today she helps them turn their stories into award-winning rugs. But to be able to do that, she and her father had to dismantle a system that had completely lost sight with its front line, in this case, the artisans.
Jimmy, our industry has been broken for the longest time. It's been very upsetting because it was all about trading. There was no human in the picture. The art was never spoken about. The people were never spoken about. It was all about the profits or the sale, Our industry saw the carpet as a commodity and never even spoke about the weavers. We decided to make a change because it was not sustainable for the industry to operate this way and for us to treat human without any dignity, without any sense of connection. And so we built systems to really have our frontline directly work with the artisans and understand them, hear them, and at the same time connect that to the customers. So Jaipur Rugs became literally a platform to connect the weavers with our customers and allow for the art to happen.
And then tell me the revolution that your father started and that you are continuing.
So we really work in remote villages that don't have access to farming or other industries or really infrastructures and other options. And so carpet weaving becomes very, very important in these regions because a woman can work out of her home, from the comfort of her home, and she can take care of her children, she can take care of her household, and at the same time, she can be fully independent because she's able to earn her own income. So this is how we understood that it was really changing lives and families' way of living in the villages in these remote parts of India. So that's why we say that it's the blessings from these families that are captured into the carpets.
I'd love you to tell me, is you get this vision when you talk to you that when you're buying the carpets, it's almost like you're buying a 2-month snapshot of the village.
Yes, it's in the very first round, we did the experiment with this project and we told our artisans, hey, do whatever you like. This is your canvas, feel free. Of course, I didn't expect what I saw in this particular carpet. So it's a scenery where it's a large lotus on an 8-feet carpet with fish and water and a very serene, beautiful surrounding. And then as the carpet progresses towards the top, you have a house with a large tree. And there's a monkey sitting on this tree holding a gun and actually shooting a rabbit. So it was completely unexpected to see this kind of imagery on the carpet. And as much as we were surprised by this carpet, it became one of the most talked about carpet in our industry.
So what has happened with the weavers when you start recognizing them as artists and you start celebrating the human again?
I think even initially, when my father started working with them directly, they had a whole different spirit. It was like a family coming together, first of all. There wasn't really a difference between the company and them as the artist. There was always free communication and sharing, and there was a culture of care between them and understanding them. But then as we also made them into artists, it also dramatically shifted to more benefits. Like recently, when we spoke to some of the weavers that, how has this art changed you? And the women said that, that we have been able to lift our veils, that we, in Rajasthan, the women wear veils, to not look directly into the eyes of men and people in the society. So the women very much commented how they can lift the veils today and work. And that is a dignity and the sense of pride it has brought them.
Kavi's story shows us this. You treat the product like a commodity, and you're going to treat the front line like a commodity. Love the product, and you'll hugely value the front line. Kavi listens to the weaver story. She honors their wins. She grasps their needs, and crucially, from that, she gains daily insight into what customers want. The way we listen and learn from frontline feedback, it's vital. It's a key strategic asset we have. But there's an important distinction to make here. There's what folks call inner loop learning. This is customer feedback that the frontline can act upon immediately. Service areas, best practices. And then there's outer loop learning. This is the stuff that requires big changes. Our pricing's off, our product mix is off. There's an insurgent coming in and we don't have a response. Well, we've got to pull those issues from daily frontline operation and address them in a different forum. And both types of learning matter hugely. Great organizations with leaders in daily conversations with the front line, they're bringing the voice of the customer into every decision. Less talk between managers and more discussion of customers. And the commitment to do that has to start at the top. So now let's go from rural India, we're back to China, and we're back to Christina.
The view that we take as retailers can be very different. When you go to a store, I find that sometimes our merchants, they see this is my section, and that's my section. This is 01, that's 02, that's 74. The customers don't think that way. If I'm visiting a store the first time, I step into the store, I look around, I need to know immediately if there's a place I want to shop. Do they have what I need? Am I the intended customer for this shop? Customers consciously or subconsciously make the assessment immediately. So how do you make sure you make that right impression? So I think that's one way where I see the difference. And I think the other thing about us associates is that we sometimes design very well-intended processes for associates. And then we don't realize they don't have the right tools. They don't have the right training. Or they're trained such, they interpret in a very different way. And they do it still without really understanding it. And that creates so much waste in the whole process and frustrates everyone. For example, when we look at features, I push EDLP because I also realize that promotion is such a waste on the staff energy. We put a feature, we bring stuff back in the book from the back room into the floor, and then we get people move out the floor. And there's so much energy being wasted on moving in and out that does not create any real value for customers. And associates had to do this because that's in the playbook. They had to do it. So just things like that's very simple. You only feel that how wasteful we could be or how ridiculous we could be when you actually get to the field. Then you see it.
There's something very profound about this. I want to explore because I think you are probably the master of it, which is we're kind of on the issue of simplicity and energy. And you gave the example of the reason you support everyday low prices, the strategy, is because it avoids all the wastefulness that goes through the promotion cycles. And our people, therefore, can stay focused on the things that matter for our customers because we are working every day for everyday low price. We've made a strategic choice, and that then simplifies a lot of variability. And I imagine that is what's so powerful about you saying if we have the winning strategy, if we said no to a lot of things, if we say linear focused, then the degree of variance that happens in our front line is dependent upon the customer, not on our complexity.
We want to go EDLP, of course. I think that energy, the efficiency is a big part, but also just builds trust. China is such a high-low market. It's a promotion-heavy market. So the retailers and a lot of the customers, they take it as a given. Of course you do it. And of course, the customers, when faced the choice of a slightly lower price as promotion versus a normal price, people think, of course, people would choose a lower price. No, actually, no. Customers, they also want trust. EDLP works in the long term. It's a long-term strategy because it focuses on building trust in the long term, but it takes time. It takes time for people to really believe in it. It takes time for vendors to believe in it. It takes time for our customers to believe in it. But when you actually make it happen, it can be very powerful. And it's very powerful because a lot of people don't dare to try because it's stopped.
Look, loyalty is only achieved when the customer trusts us to deliver what they need. So what do they need? Well, we're not going to find the answer in quarterly reports or yet another change management meeting. We need eyes and ears on the ground where our customers are. Take Hilti, the construction tools giant. You know them. They've got those iconic red cases around construction sites. While competitors scaled through distributors, Hilti stuck with direct sales. Why? Because it gave them thousands of people in the field watching, listening, and understand what's actually happening on construction sites. And it paid off. One example, their hammer drills got so fast that extra speed didn't matter anymore. So they flipped the question, not to how do I drill faster, but to how do I find the right place to drill faster? And that took them into laser systems, which helped the construction guys actually target where they were drilling. That's outer loop learning in action. Hilti took customer insight and used it to perfect products, and eventually they even launched new software and services, all by watching customers in action. Look, we started this by saying the job of the CEO is to sort through all the chaos of the world and keep making things simple. And that's a hell of a lot harder than it sounds. And in fact, I talk to CEOs who take great pride in their ability to manage huge amounts of complexity. But the best CEOs don't manage it, they eliminate it. Christina makes simplicity a superpower. And I wanted to know, where did that come from?
I've had a very diverse career. I've always had to move from a sector to another. So, which means I had to learn things really quickly. So which means you have to focus on what really matters. Go beyond the superficial, what really matters. You really need to get to the fundamental level of the business model of that sector. And I think always comes to question is you ask yourself, what really creates customer value? Because the essence of a successful business is you have find a way to create better customer value than your competition. Complexity can only exist if they create net customer value. If they don't, so we do have complexity. Of course you do. In a business like this scale, you have complexity, but they're only allowed if they really create net customer value. It's very simple. When you think about that equation, then your decision becomes very simple.
I love that. I mean, central to your view of joyful routines is it's also a learning system, meaning that it's something where Walmart is constantly collecting the voice of the customer, the voice of the frontline, getting the feedback, learning and changing. So what are the systems or processes you put in place to collect frontline associate feedback, customer feedback so you can change?
We have lots of process. We have listening tours, we have town halls, we have, we start everyday morning meetings, we collect surveys. But I think that's one part. The other part is making sure it's embedded into everything you do. You go to stores. You go to store announced and unannounced. You walk the floors. You ask questions. You talk to people. And also when you discuss and debate, making sure the last person to speak, you hear from others first. So I think it's the rituals and process you have to design. You have to intentionally create those programs, but you also have to embed into everything you do.
I wonder if that's the answer of how you're navigating the turbulence of China, because, you are surrounded by daily innovation. How do you navigate that? Is it customer value? Is that the main lens, or are there others?
I think customer is the main lens. You have to make sure customers is actually indeed at the center of your decision making. We're not allowed to have a meeting without talking about customer. With a explicitly. Like if you discuss your P&L, the first thing you ask yourself is a customer. Whenever we have any debate, whether it's about a new item, whether it's about a new policy, whether it's about a new organizational setup, you have to ask the question: does it really truly create customer value in the long term? Right? We can be better at creating this value than anyone else. As a retailer, you need to constantly work on that competitive edge. But the competitive edge, everything you do, that needs to be centered around that one yardstick, which is customer value.
I'd love to just pivot a little bit and say, if that's the case, who do you look for, or what do you look for in a Walmart leader?
The first thing I always make sure I check is integrity. You need to get that out of the way. So that's really important. But then I think for leaders, I do think customer centricity is important. They need to understand the fundamental elements of the business is, again, the ability to create customer value better than anyone else. And they need to be able to link what they do to that. I think at leadership level, it's a must. I think learning agility is important. But then also, I think for leaders in China, you need to have that combination of innovation, but also scaling. You don't have to be the inventor, but you need to be able to see good ideas, recognize great ideas, and be willing to innovate. At the same time, with the scale and complexity of our business, you can't just be a single-minded innovator. You need to think about how I scale it. Because again, we are about doing great work, delivering our promise to customer every day with every single customer. It's not just a great idea, but also the great idea that can be executed well by tens of thousands of people. Repeatedly, sustainably.
There are clear themes emerging here that echo our conversation with Aaron Powell in episode 1. Love the product and the folks that make and sell it. Focus on simplifying, not clever ways to manage complexity. During this season, you'll hear the voices of 10 extraordinary CEOs, but there's a chorus behind them of hundreds of CEOs from our CEO forums telling their story. We've collected them all in one place for you on the Founders Mentality website, and you'll see the link in the show notes. And now, we're back to Christina with some rapid fire questions. So the first question is, what brings you energy?
My family, my kids. I always say the kids are the best leadership coaches.
What drains you of energy?
Seeing us doing things, designing things, implementing things that don't really work at the front line.
What is the thing that you, work or otherwise, are most passionate about in life?
Making an impact on people's lives.
Do you have a repeatable model you use at work?
I lean on people. I think leading means leaning on your people, but not just leaning on them, but really intentionally think about ways that the things you can do to help them better. I've never done the same thing twice, Jimmy. I could never really rely on experience. I've always gone from industry to industry. I think for leaders, it's so important. What matters is not that you are the smartest person in the room. Our role is to make the room smarter.
Love that. I love that. And since you are the author of Joyful Routines, what is your joyful routine?
Reading non-business books. I would do something, no matter how late I finish my work, I'll read something that's completely different from business. And so most time it means I only have time to read a short poem. But that short poem, for like the 30 seconds, it transforms my world.
What is a poem you would recommend at the end of this podcast?
The whole poem, it escapes me right now, but the last 2 lines reads, "Sit and feast on your life."
So let's recap the takeaways from today's episode.
Taking out any complexity that does not create customer value, eliminate it, and always seek that input from your frontline associates because they see all the frictions firsthand.
Joyful routines aren't about creating superficial happiness. They're about winning. And too often we lock our people into routines that are doing the wrong things for customers. Be right, then repeatable.
The real goal is actually to create an environment where associates can experience the joy of winning and the joy of winning together.
To create joyful routines, you got to listen to the people in the front line. As a leader, your job is to simplify their job, which is to keep customer promises. Your job isn't to give them tools or cultural posters to manage the complexity that you've designed into their jobs. Change management meetings are when you know you're doing the wrong thing for your people, but you use some consultant to shove it down their throat.
We have listening tours, we have town halls, we collect surveys. But I think that's one part. The other part is making sure it's embedded into everything you do.
It's not enough to collect customer feedback. We got to use it. Empower the front line to act on feedback to delight customers. But also remember what Christina said. In every decision you make, whether it's around strategy, operations, growth, whatever, you got to ask yourself, does this really, truly create customer value in the long term? If we fall back in love with our product, if we create joyful routines, our customers are going to come back and they're going to bring friends, and growth will follow. But of course, that growth will create complexity. And the founding mission then gets buried under a sea of KPIs. Suddenly, we're managing the managers, or worse, the energy vampires. And when that happens, we lose the why. Why do we exist? Why the hell do we even show up at work? And in our next episode, I'll be talking with Don Katz. He's the founder of Audible. He's a pioneer in digital storytelling and one of the great entrepreneurs of our time. He disrupted an entire industry, building Audible into a global brand, and then he reignited 1,000 conversations inside his company about the why. And that's next time. Stay curious.